Welcome to the Wolverine Digest podcast, the best spot for objective and authentic coverage of Michigan athletics. If you want open dialogue, honest opinions, and in-depth coverage of the maize and blue, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Brandon Brown, joined as always by Chris Breiler.
Wednesday night, Brandon Brown and Chris Breiler bringing it to you live on a hump day. I don't know, man. We were talking coming into the pod here and figuring out what we were going to say, some topics, trying to figure out what kinds of things need to be discussed. It feels a little bit like a sleepy Wednesday.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, like, there wasn't a lot that jumped off the page when I'm looking at some notes that I took at the press conferences. There wasn't a lot when I look back at what we posted on the website that was like, oh, dang, that's a really good talking point. It's kind of like the middle of the week lull. You're coming off the win against Western. You're starting to gear up towards Washington. And, yeah, I don't know. Has a little bit of a sleepy vibe, but we're going to try to wake it up. We're going to try to do it live.
Do it live.
We're going to try to do some big things here. So I am excited, though. We're going to be joined by our Washington expert, Mike Martin, who runs the Husky Maven site, the Sports Illustrated site for Washington, and get his insight on everything that's going on with Washington now coming off of their, really bad loss, embarrassing loss, first loss ever to an FCS team. They lost to Montana last weekend, 13-7, I believe was the final score. So they're reeling a little bit. We're going to get into that with Mike. We're going to talk about that exact topic and what that really means for Michigan, what we think, and then get really in depth with Mike about Washington, some of their players, what's going on with them, and things that Michigan fans need to know about getting ready for that game on Saturday. But first, we will talk about one of the stories that you put up today, Chris. Your namesake, right, Chris Weber, back in the, well, I don't know. I'll let you explain because you're the expert on this. You looked into it today. You put the story up. I guess, is Chris Weber back in the good graces of Michigan, or what's the latest going on there? Because it seems like there's some movement.
Yeah, it sure sounds like there's an appetite to sort of make things right. Weber, he did a series of interviews this week. He's preparing to, I don't know what he's getting inducted into, but it's some sort of college basketball Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. He was doing interviews with different media outlets during the week, and it came up. He brought up he might have been asked the question about Michigan, and he said flat out that he received an apology from Ward Manuel, Michigan's athletic director. And he said something, Ward Manuel said something to the effect of, we should have protected the 18-year-old Chris Weber better, and obviously the people out there know what happened with Chris Weber. And then I think in 2003 was when he pled guilty. That started the whole 10-year ban between Weber and the University of Michigan, and things have been rocky ever since. So I think a lot of this is due to the new era of NIL and kind of people looking at things differently and what college athletes deserve and what they have a right to. And personally, I said this when I put out the article. I think it's a long time coming. I know Weber's been around a little bit. He was an honorary captain in 2018 for Harbaugh, something like that. He was a huge part of the Michigan basketball story. And I would love to see Weber and the Fab Five be embraced again because they deserve it.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were going to bring it up on your own or if I was going to kick it back to you, but I think NIL is a major part of this. I mean, it's like suddenly the things that people were getting in trouble for are just out in the open and completely allowed, and not only allowed, but encouraged. I mean, like, you have some pretty powerful coaches standing at the podium talking about the deals that their players are getting and how good this can be for the student athlete. And obviously the student athletes themselves want this to continue to blow up and to continue to grow and give them more opportunities. So yeah, now you look back and it's like, well, all right, it was a rule then, and he broke it and he admitted to it and he took his lumps and, kind of fell out with Michigan a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's like, shoot, man, it was just the wrong time because now everything he did is allowed. And so it's a little weird. It is. It's a little strange. He was, arguably the most popular face among the most popular group of college basketball players in the history of the sport. Yeah. And it's really crazy. I mean, it was a long time ago, so you might think the numbers would be a little different. But can you imagine how much money the Fab Five could have made with name, image, and likeness? I
It's
mean,
ridiculous.
it's ridiculous. More than what I don't know. I don't know I don't know the amount Weber took. It's not as much as he would have made. Let's put it that way.
Right. Or
Nike,
how much money could the University of Michigan made pushing
exactly.
Fab 5 gear over these last, this last decade or 2 decades or however long it's been? Like they are still just as
Still
relevant
good.
and as popular as they ever have been. Maybe not during their heyday, but everybody knows about the Fab 5. They are still big time.
Dude, if they threw out like a retro merch line,
take my money. Take
it
my
would
money.
fly off the shelves.
If they come out with like a Jordan Brand Fab 5 throwback, I'm
Yeah.
buying all of it. I'm buying
Like
all of it. And my
designed,
hunch is a lot of people are, yeah.
designed to look old and look like it did back in
Yes.
the 90s when they played 100%. And the
Yep.
the dark socks and the black Nikes and the long shorts and the bald heads. I mean, dude, they had it all. They had everything that was marketable, that was cool, and it was wide reaching. I know I lived in South Carolina for 8 years and coached and taught down there and had a lot of friends that were close to my age and grew up in the South, diehard South Carolina fans, diehard Clemson fans. And they were like, oh, I had a Michigan starter jacket because I loved Chris Webber. I loved Jalen Rose. I loved the Fab Five. And I'm like, I never had anything Clemson or South Carolina growing up. There wasn't nothing like that reached up here to me. So it was an absolute national brand, international brand, maybe even on some levels in some ways. But yeah, so now with NIL in place, with players in universities and schools all kind of mixed up in this thing the way that it is, it seems silly that there is any rift between Michigan and Chris Webber and the Fab Five and whatever else is going on. So I'm with you, man. I think, well, let me pitch it to you this way. Do we see the whole gang back together this season? Do you think Juwan Howard works something out where Chris Webber, Jalen Rose, Jimmy King, Ray Jackson are all back together? I don't know if it's out on the court. I don't know if it's just a presentation and they're all in the building. Do you think we see that? Because I feel like it's coming.
Mark it down right now. The Fab Five will be in Chrysler this year. It's happening. It just, and you can't overstate the importance of Juwan Howard taking over the coaching position.
That's maybe the biggest part of it.
Right. So it just seems like, I don't know, man. I love that Howard's back. I love that there's an appetite to bring Weber back in, and it's such a big part of the Michigan story. And based on this report that came out and what Chris had said about what he heard from the AD, I would be shocked if you don't see the Fab Five standing on the court at Chrysler this year. Which would be
awesome.
Man, what a hell of a sight. That what they should do? They should bring the Five down on the court and they should raise the damn banners. That would be a moment.
That would be good. I would like that for the website. I would like that for the podcast. I would like that for the photo ops. It'd be huge. I mean, it would be probably one of the loudest ovations you could hear all season. I mean, this is something that this is a logistics thing for the for the website and for our workload, but I don't know how much basketball we're going to cover in terms of going to the game. That one would be all hands on deck, get there early, stay the whole time, stay afterwards, get interviews with all those guys, talk to them about the whole thing. It would be an amazing night. I hope that happens.
Yeah. I mean, that would be arguably one of the biggest moments in Michigan sports history, the reconciliation of the Fab Five and putting the banners back up in the rafters where they belong. And I think, NIL has made all of that look really silly in hindsight. And there were a lot of people that made a lot of money off of Chris Webber, made a lot of money off the Fab Five. And if you listen to what the Supreme Court said when it came to NIL, they basically said like the NCAA it's been borderline, like, I don't want to say like slave labor type thing, but it would never fly in any other working environment they were doing with the NCAA. So I think now that NIL is out there, people are kind of looking at this differently and saying like, these guys, if they're marketable, like that's what America is. Like you're worth whatever somebody's willing to pay you, and nobody should ever come in and try to put a roadblock between you and whatever opportunity might come your way.
The amount of holding down and holding back is while raking in billions with a B is just crazy. It's crazy.
You got to protect the honey hole, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
If you're making a lot of money, you want to keep making a lot of money. And one way that, one thing that can throw a wrench into that, if you're one of the big executives who've been profiting off of these student athletes for so long, is you allow them to reap the benefits of their own marketability.
See, the weird thing is, though, and maybe somebody smarter than me can explain this to me. I don't really see how like anybody who was making a buttload of money is going to make less by allowing the athletes to go get theirs at the same time. I mean, maybe if some of the big commercial deals that would have gone directly to something else now go to like DJ Uyunglele, the quarterback from Washington or from Clemson, is in a Dr. Pepper commercial. Now, maybe before that, I don't know. I don't really know how that works or like what Dr. Pepper's doing differently now that they can do this and what they would have done before if it wasn't allowed. I don't know. To me, it seems like the pie's real big. Give the pieces out where they should go, and the people who are making money are still going to make money. Like the TV deals are still there. The massive, the massive payouts for all the multimedia and all the money that changes hands between programs and the different networks, the Big Ten Network, the Longhorn Network, things like that. I don't see how that goes away or changes or becomes any different because the players can now go to a car dealership and make a couple grand. It just is kind of weird to me. I don't again, somebody could probably explain it in a way that I would see like, oh, well, that's why the NCAA and the people involved didn't want this to happen. But for me, it looks like a win-win on the surface.
Yeah, and guys like you and I are in lockstep. It is a win-win, but I think that when you get to the executive level, the idea of athletes being able to make money, off of the school's brand or whatever the case is, I think these guys traditionally have looked at it like if there's any money coming in, that money comes to us, and then we figure out how that operates. And with NIL, they've lost a lot of control over how some of that works, and so I think part of it is probably just the loss of control is a weird thing for the NCAA right now. And it probably, to those guys who are afraid of it, looks like the first step towards something that, might eliminate the NCAA altogether. It might not be necessary.
Well, I've seen some instances of that on a smaller scale at this university that we cover, because now guys like Chris and I don't have to ask to talk to players anymore. And they don't really love that, I don't think. So you're right. I mean, the people in positions of power, they get used to doing something a way that they do it, and change signals panic and maybe a loss of control, a loss of money, a loss of influence, whatever it may be. I mean, all people who've ever been in a position of power don't want any of that taken away. That's why conflicts happen. That's why people get nasty, and then you throw money in there and it gets even nastier. So yeah, it's a weird thing. It's a much bigger topic than just the Chris Webber situation, but specifically for what's going on at Michigan and Michigan basketball, it seems like kind of a no-brainer at this point. Like the dude got in trouble, it was always a tough thing to talk about. I mean, some of the old traditionalists didn't, thought Chris Webber, tanked the program, that he was out there just me. And I never felt that way. I was pretty young when the Fab Five was playing and coming up, and I just loved everything that they were about. Yeah. But I know there's quite a few people who aren't fans of Chris Webber now because of how that went and what happened and what it did to the program. But again, when you look at it through today's lens, it's like, what the hell was he even in trouble for? I mean, really, they talked about, and I always wondered like if this was a little extreme, but he'd say, I don't know if it was Weber specifically or one of the other members of the Fab Five, but they'd say, they'd walk by a storefront, they'd see the number 4 jersey. Who's getting that money? That's my jersey right there. Right. And I don't even have money to go out to dinner. And, that's messed up. I mean, it is. So it's been rectified at least on a lot of levels with NIL. And I think it is still it's going to morph and it's going to change. And we know that it's only been a couple of months, but we've seen some massive deals for some different guys. Yeah. We talked about it a lot with the guys at Ohio State. Miami was one of the first schools to do kind of a full team kind of deal. I mean, think about that too. Actually, that's another talking point we can throw out here real quick on this Weber thing, and then we'll move on. Like, what kind of deal could the Fab Five have fostered for the whole team back then? Like, everybody would have ate, man. All those guys, the guys who didn't even play, would have been like, damn, I'm glad I'm on the Fab Five team right now. I'm glad I ride pine while those dudes do their thing because it just got me paid. I mean, that's how it worked.
Just unreal. And I think when you look at how marketable they were, and again, you look at just how America operates and how it's supposed to be, where, you're worth what somebody says you're worth. And, if somebody's willing to pay you for something, then that's just kind of how things work. I mean, that's capitalism. And so, like we said before, you look back at this thing when you consider how much money, not just the Fab Five, but the guys that were a part of that team, that collection of guys could have made during their time in college. I think you look back at it and you say, man, that was a shitty situation. The NCAA was wrong. Yeah, Weber was wrong. He didn't need to lie to a grand jury.
Sure.
But he's owned up to part of his mistake too. But I think both sides were wrong. It was a shitty situation. And now it's time to reconcile, put the damn banners back up and bring the Fab Five back together, because most importantly, I want Fab Five Jordan gear. That I want it. I need it. I need it in my life.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. That would be some stuff that, like I said, it would sell out in a hurry. A lot of people would be on board with that. I mean,
those
we saw
Fab Five Jordan exclusives, whatever shoe they would come out with. I mean, that's going to be hot.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we saw a little bit of this not too long ago with Reggie Bush was trying to get he was trying to get his Heisman back, right?
They denied him.
Right. I mean, why?
Why?
Man. Yeah, I mean, well, so, the NCAA is still going to be the NCAA, so we'll see. But this isn't really an NCAA thing. This is a Michigan thing. So in-house, the family, the Maize and Blue family, they can get it right and they can fix it. And with a powerful guy, a successful, powerful guy, stand-up guy like Juwan Howard kind of spearheading it all, and it's his boy, it's his brother, former teammate, it seems inevitable. It seems inevitable. This season would be amazing. I don't know, you do that before, the Michigan State game or something. I mean, dude, the roof might blow off that place, man. The roof might just blow off. All right, let's switch over to football, talk a little bit about what's going on this week, what we saw last week. We touched on this topic a little bit already. I think it was part of our burning questions, if I'm not mistaken. I think I asked you about it, but it seems to be, I don't know, growing legs a little bit around social media, different topics, different people talking about it. I was asked about it on the radio today with Jamie Morris on the M Zone. It's this QB controversy idea, man. This thing about, Cade versus JJ. And I don't want to make it into a Cade versus JJ thing. I don't want to disparage Cade McNamara at all, because he was great. He was really good against Western, but he also didn't have to do a whole hell of a lot. 9 for 11, $140, 2 touches. I mean, what's he look like if he has to throw it 30 times, 40 times? And then you see JJ come in and he's running around a little bit. He's breaking a tackle. He's making an ill-advised throw look money and scoring a long touchdown on it. He's just making some plays. And today at the media availability, talking to Josh Gaddis, and I actually had this pointed out to me by one of our interns, Jacob Cohen. Yeah, for everybody out there, by the way, Jacob Cohen and Josh Taubman, students at Michigan, both working for the Daily, are going to be doing some intern work for us throughout the season. So really excited to have them. Smart dudes, really good workers, and they're already getting after it. So anyway, it was Jacob today that pointed out to me. I was taking him back to his house, and he said, he's like, do you notice how differently the coaches talk about Cade and JJ? And it hadn't really hit me like that, but they talked about, like Matt Weiss said, we don't need JJ to go, or we don't need Cade to go out and win the game. We need him to play within himself. We need him to do this, be efficient, move the ball. And then when they talk about JJ, they're like, we don't want to coach that out of him. Special talent, makes plays. He slings it around. There's different language. There's different words. There's different energy, all of that. So I'm starting to think I don't know. I still don't think there's a controversy. I said this on the radio today. I think it's Cade. I don't think there's going to be any changing of the guard this year. I don't feel that. But I don't think it's a crazy thing to talk about after even the little bit we saw from JJ and what we're kind of hearing and just kind of reading between the lines a little bit.
Yeah, I wouldn't say QB controversy. I would say QB intrigue is maybe probably a better way to put it. And I think what we saw last weekend was the perfect example of kind of how I feel about Cade McNamara. He went out and managed the game 9 for 11. He wasn't put in a position where he had to, his back was against the wall and he had to make anything happen. He did his job. What we don't know about Cade McNamara is, does he have that X factor? When Michigan is up against the ropes, does he have what it takes to go out and make a big time play? That was what we saw from JJ McCarthy. Now, granted, it was an ill-advised throw, but the fact that he went out there and did that in his first game, didn't even think twice, man, just, stiff arm, break the tackle, 2 guys bearing down on you, chuck it 60 yards across the field for a touchdown pass. That's the type of next level stuff that Michigan hasn't had at the QB position in a really long time. So is Cade McNamara that? I don't know. We'll probably find out. But I will say, I do think it is still likely that JJ McCarthy becomes the guy this year. And the way I see it playing out is, if Michigan gets into an offensive lull, if they're struggling to move the ball, if they're not putting points on the board, I could see Harbaugh saying, all right, let's go to the young gun. When he came in against Western Michigan, JJ got a standing ovation. The stadium was electric. And if they need a jolt in the arm offensively, I could see JJ coming in, and if he starts making plays, man, we've seen it happen before. It's going to be how do you pull him out if he starts really doing his thing out there? Now you've got a real decision to make, and I think we're going to see that at some point this season still.
Or if he steps out there and slings it and it goes the other way for a pick six.
There's always that.
You busted down your freshman quarterback's confidence. No, I'm being facetious, playing devil's advocate a little bit there, because we talked about this, man. When you've got a boomer bust guy, a talented guy, a guy who's not afraid to. And by the way, on that throw, you mentioned the two guys bearing down on him. He took it in the freaking chin, man. He took it on the chin, still made the throw, got up, sprinted down the field, celebrated with his guys. There's something there. There's something there. I mean, I don't want to say this in a way that disparages Cade McNamara, but there's something there with JJ that there's not with Cade. And I think you can hear it when you hear the coaches talk about the two of them. And I think you could see it on Saturday, even if it was against Western Michigan late in the third, fourth quarter, whenever that was, and Michigan's already winning and won the game. Cade's on the sideline with a towel around his neck. He's not coming back in. JJ's out there like, hey, what the hell? Let me see what I got. And, so the situation of the game, your whole thought process approaching it as like, well, even if I throw a pick here, I mean, the game's not in danger. I can be a little loose with it. But some quarterbacks don't even have that in them. Like and maybe Cade is this way, but some quarterbacks would never make that throw. They never would do it. They wouldn't even think about it. I'm not throwing it late. They couldn't, or they physically couldn't make that throw. So yeah, there's something there. Again, I'm with you. I'm not saying quarterback controversy. I don't even think I'm willing to say what you said about JJ becoming the starter this year. I don't feel that yet. I don't, but there's something there. That's about as much as I can say about it right now. There's something there with JJ. You saw it on Saturday. You felt it. You feel it when you hear the coaches talk a little bit, and that's why they wanted the guy. That's why they recruited him. That's why he's QB2, and that's why if something did happen to Cade, I think they'd feel okay with JJ, stepping in if, again, knock on wood, if Cade was to get injured again or something like he did last year, you've got a guy there that's going to be a little frustrating. Maybe he's going to be like, oh, don't do that. But he's also going to
as hell
be fun. He's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. That's JJ McCarthy. That's
him. Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't know. So, all right, we're heading into week 2. Put your money where your mouth is, man. What games he start?
I mean, if it happens, I don't see the transition coming until after the bye week. And so I think you're probably looking like Northwestern, Michigan State. The only reason I think that things are headed that way is, again, we just haven't seen Cade in the situation where he can be that guy that goes out and makes plays. And to your point, the coaches talk about the two quarterbacks very differently, that they don't need Cade to be this guy that can go out and create plays and make something happen. He's just got to stay within himself. If Michigan gets to a point where they need a big play, they need something to happen, I can see Michigan being in that position this year easily. And I can easily see JJ McCarthy coming in, playing well. I saw that comment. Hey man, but look, I
didn't start this.
Yeah. I like Cade. Don't get me wrong. All I'm saying is week 1, we saw something from JJ that we didn't see from Cade. And what we saw from JJ is the type of thing that Michigan has been lacking at that position for so long. It's the type of thing that's kept Michigan from getting over the hump. Is JJ ready this year? I don't think so. But that goes back to my original argument. I want JJ ready 2022, full season under his belt. That's what I think puts Michigan in the best position to succeed long-term moving forward.
Yeah, for those listening that can't see the screen, Jay Sloan comments, y'all brutal tonight. He's laughing. He's laughing. I don't think he's mad at us, but Cade's the man, he says. And I don't know, man.
He did nothing wrong. Cade did nothing wrong.
Another comment on this topic. Cade is a game manager. This is from Dan Borman. Cade is a game manager, which isn't bad when you have a great defense. I'm not sure the defense is that great. JJ has the it factor, and that's what's going to win you big games. That's more along the lines of how I think you look at these two right now. I mean, look, man, it's a freaking game. It's like one game in, Western Michigan, game at hand. JJ comes in for a handful of series and makes one big splash play that, let's be honest, if he's off by 6 inches, it's picked off.
Yeah.
And maybe going back the other way for a touchdown. So, like, I'm not saying he's the guy to go in there right now and like you're going to win more with him than you are with Cade. That's not what I'm saying. But again, there's something to be said about him doing what he did. Rolling out, break a tackle, set your feet, take it on the chin, throw a hose, score, run down there with your boys. I don't know.
I haven't seen Cade do it yet. He might have that in him. I mean, hell, at Nevada, he had over, I think, 12,000 career passing yards. He wasn't a game manager in Nevada, so he's got that in him. We'll see if it comes out. But like I said, we saw that in JJ. It was one throw. We haven't seen it out of Cade yet. That isn't to say that he doesn't have it.
So you heard it here first. Chris Breiler on record. JJ McCarthy starts October 23rd against Northwestern. Put it down. And put it in a frame, and we'll come back to it. No, I mean, I don't think what you're saying is unreasonable. I don't. I just think
you can see Michigan in a situation this year where they're struggling offensively, right? There's
gonna
come a time, right? There's gonna come a time where Michigan just is gonna go a handful of drives without putting the ball in the end zone, and they might need a shot in the arm. And I just go back to, we've seen it. I mean, we've seen Clemson make a quarterback change when they were undefeated and go to Trevor Lawrence, right? Like we've seen
Bama did it in a national title game and went to Tua.
Go.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not that unheard of. If Michigan gets in a situation where they need that shot in the arm, I think JJ is that at the quarterback position. And based on how he plays, that might be all she wrote.
It might be. It might just be. So yeah, I mean, it's like I said, we're kidding about it a little bit, but I mean, I saw it in multiple places on social media. I saw different people talking about it. They asked me about that on the radio today with Jamie Morris, and so it's not like we fabricated this out of thin air, but it's an interesting topic when you look back at the game and you see how efficient and just mistake free Cade was. I mean, I don't know how it's funny though. I don't know how you come out of that game and say like, maybe Cade needs to ride pine. Like he did everything like perfectly. Right. I mean, he didn't have to do much, but everything he was asked to do, he did it exactly how he should. So yeah, I don't know. It's a fun topic. It's a fun topic when you've got a shiny new toy like JJ McCarthy sitting right
there.
Tough
being a quarterback at Michigan, man, when you
and look, man,
like us.
And look, the backup quarterback is always like the most popular guy. Everybody wants to see the next guy. Last year, it was, wait till we get this, and JJ's coming in. And the year before that, it was like, when Joe Milton's the guy, just wait. And there was a McCaffrey camp as well. Yeah. But yeah.
I mean, you're going down the list. You're going down the list of them, and it's been 2 decades outside of the enigma that was Denard Robinson and what he was able to do athletically. Michigan hasn't had, probably since Chad Henne, that like surefire, this is our QB1, this is our guy. It's always been sort of like nobody has really taken that job by the horns and like, yes, that's who it is. I mean, maybe Shea Patterson came as close to that as anybody since Henne, but even that, like the fans were split on Shea Patterson, and it was like, it needs to be Dylan, it needs to be somebody else. And so I think you're going to continue to see that second guy be the most popular guy until somebody goes out and just, it's unquestionable. That is our guy, where it's obvious to everybody.
J.R. Reed with a comment here. JJ has a lot to learn. Yes, he had a great play, but Cade threw catchable balls, though, set for a couple tip passes. Cade doesn't miss the tight end down the middle. JJ's going to live up, but not this year. That's kind of where I'm at. There were a couple plays where JJ was a little off the mark. He was a little behind a guy, a little low, at least one time. But again, all overshadowed by that. No. Oh, my God, did you see that throw, touchdown? Right. Dalen Baldwin in there makes a big play. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll continue to monitor.
It's all about your focus for this year, what you think Michigan's capable of this year. If you don't think Michigan's capable of winning a Big Ten championship this year, then to me, J.J. McCarthy makes the most sense. If you think Michigan is a good enough team this year where they can legitimately compete with the likes of Ohio State, get to Indy for a Big Ten title.
With Cade.
With Cade. If you think they can do that with Cade, then yeah, of course you ride with Cade. But if you don't think they got a shot at it, to me, McCarthy makes the most sense.
All right, really quick, one word answer here, Chris, before we move on to our next topic. Does J.J. McCarthy play Saturday against Washington?
Yes, 100%.
All right, there you go. All right, next topic. Kind of along these same lines. I mean, it's not specific to the quarterback, but how much do you feel like you really know about Michigan football now? They beat down Western. They were favored by 17. They doubled that up. So, I mean, like, Michigan's never been great against the spread, and they crushed it on Saturday. Did really whatever they wanted, adjusted after the first 2 drives. And really, I mean, Western was they couldn't do anything. I mean, they weren't really stopping Michigan. They weren't moving the ball after that first drive or two. And, I mean, like we just talked about for a while, Cade was done with a towel on his head for most of the second half. So how much do you really feel like I mean, like going into this Washington game, and you can bring Washington into it too. How much do you feel like you know about them at this point after they lose a head scratcher against FCS opponent Montana? Just kind of, I mean, it's week 2. I still feel like maybe – do we have more question marks now? I don't know how that works, but like that's kind of where I feel.
I think no. So I walked away from Saturday knowing 2 things for sure, concrete. One, Blake Corum is that dude. He's going to be good in every game because the things you saw him do on the football field, it translates from week to week. It wasn't just a bad opponent. It was the jump cuts. It was the way he moved,
the vision, speed.
Right, the vision. All of those things are going to carry for the rest of the season. And the other thing I felt extremely confident about was Ronnie Bell. He's going to ball out. This guy, not following the game, but as the game was going on, I'm like, this dude's prime for a breakout year. Like, this is bag season for Ronnie Bell. Like, he's going to go from, unnamed guy to, maybe a second rounder. And with Bell being injured, I still walk away feeling like I don't really know much about this team. I know kind of how they're lining up now, and I know some of the things they want to do. But, it's hard to gauge who Michigan is right now, particularly against a Western Michigan. And unfortunately, now I feel like I'm in a position where I don't know that I'm going to learn much more this weekend too. Because if Michigan goes out and looks super impressive, I'll feel good about it like I did against Western, but I'm not going to view it the same way as I would had Washington walked in 1-0 as a top 20 team. So yeah, to answer your question, I don't feel like I know much more other than the fact that I know Blake Corum is who we thought he was going into the season.
I'll see your Blake Corum and raise one more thing, and that was the very obvious adjustments made by the defense. So, are they always going to be effective like they were against Western Michigan? Are they going to be as noticeable? That I don't know. And that, I would imagine they didn't roll it all out. They didn't roll it all out against Western Michigan, but I liked a little bit of what I saw with Aiden Hutchinson moving around. And you heard from the other team that they thought Aiden was going to be in a spot, and he wasn't. He was here. He was there. He was moving. He was doing different things. He got to the quarterback late. He had the big strip sack. And then I mentioned it earlier. Some of the blitzes that they were throwing out there weren't working because Ellaby was getting rid of the ball so quickly, so it went away. And then later on in the game, when it was way more obvious that Western was going to be passing, they came back. So I like that. I like what I saw about the adjustments on defense. I like that Aiden is being used in a way that seems to be put him in a better position to succeed. Let him use his length, his strength, his athleticism, his bend, all that stuff a little bit more freely. And then, Blake Corum is a stud, and Hassan Haskins is still a stud, and Donovan Edwards is going to be a stud. I mean, so there's some things that we thought we knew that were confirmed. But yeah, I mean, it's still Western. It's still a MAC school that Michigan absolutely should beat. And they really just kind of they took care of business a little bit better than maybe I thought. That's where I'm at. So if I thought Michigan was like an 80 overall, if you're using like a Madden scale or like, your college football scale, and you think Michigan's an 80 overall team, I might give them like 82, 83 now. They were a little bit better than I thought. Yeah. And on the side, Washington, who I thought was maybe an 83 or an 84, is now like maybe an 80 or a 70, 80. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to quantify it for ways to see how much do you really know. And I'm still not, I don't have a strong opinion in any direction because I just don't think we saw everything we're going to see. And it was an outmatched opponent in Western. And, I still think this game against Washington is a very big deal. I know that them losing week 1 sucks because this game was going to have so much intrigue and so much excitement and so much hype around it. And now it doesn't feel like it does, but they still have NFL talent. They're still better than Western. I mean, I know they lost to Montana, but we talked about this on Monday. I think if they played them 50 more times, they probably win it 50 times. Yeah. But you can get beat by any team on any night. So,
well,
I don't
when
know,
we
man.
talk to,
I feel like I got a lot of question marks still.
Yeah, and we'll talk to the person from Washington, I think, at some point in this podcast. But don't quote me on this, but I believe that Washington is down 4 scholarship wide receivers. If I read that right in an article, I know they're down one of their top defensive players, and so they've been hit with the injury bug. But I think you're right, man. Like, the loss to Montana was so improbable that I just can't see what. I think that's probably going to be Washington's worst game of the year. And if it's not, man, they've got bigger problems. But I think they come into Ann Arbor motivated. I think they're hungry. I think they put up a fight initially, but I think Michigan's just going to be too much to overcome. We don't know a lot about Michigan, but even from what we could gather from Saturday against Western Michigan, they're still a damn good football team. And if from a coaching standpoint, they can put all of that talent they have in a position to succeed, which it sounds like they're getting close to that, they're going to have a pretty damn good season. And I feel good about that 9-win mark.
Well, speak of the devil, we are joined now by Mike Martin from Husky Maven.
There he is.
Friend of the website. We've been talking. Mike, we actually started kind of linking up and talking about this matchup over a year ago, and then obviously things fell apart.
How many times do we chat kind of prepping for that?
I know, and we were hoping that maybe we'd make the trip out to Seattle, and that would have been an amazing setting, but it didn't happen. But now Washington gets ready to head to Ann Arbor on Saturday, coming off that crazy loss. And now I'm going to start right there with that. What are you thinking? What's the fan base thinking? Just what's the vibe right now after that inexplicable loss to Montana?
Well, Christopher said, it has to be Washington's worst loss of the season. I mean, if it's not, then there are some serious problems because that's one of the worst losses in Husky history.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going back to when the Huskies lost. I mean, I'm 55. Okay. And I can think of maybe 3 times when I was more embarrassed. 12 of them were against Oregon when they lost 12 straight. But I don't think I think everybody in Seattle, from the fans to the coaches, they're embarrassed by that loss.
Michigan fans can relate. I'll say that. Michigan fans can absolutely relate to losing a game that you just really don't have any business. Well, let me ask though. I mean, I don't know anything about Montana. How did this even happen? Okay, so Michigan lost to App State. They were ranked in the top 5, and that was just unheard of. There was no way it should have happened. But they were a pretty damn good FCS team. They went on to win a title, and they had some guys make it to the league. What is Montana? How did they win this game? How did they beat Washington?
Well, one thing is that their receivers, they're down to basically second, third stringers. They lost a ton of guys to the transfer portal, and now they've gone through a ton of injuries, and there's no free agency. So what the Huskies have right now at the receiver position there's going to be the horses they're going to have to ride out the rest of the year. That's the first thing. The defense, I think the defense played pretty well, giving up just 13 points when the offense did nothing after about the 10-minute mark in the first quarter. So, they got the touchdown off of short field position, and that's what you have to do. Capitalize. Montana capitalized on the mistakes that Washington had, and it's just, you could look at so many times when you think it was sort of like when Michigan is lining up for the storybook ending or something that you're not going to remember that Appalachian State was there. They block that field goal at the end, killing them. And the same thing happened with a turnover by Dylan Morris because they looked like they were driving. They looked like they were going to be able to do something and pull out a 14-13 win. The special teams, they weren't special. They averaged something like 17 or 18 yards on a kickoff return. The playmakers that I thought were going to be featured a lot more, like Richard Newton, they averaged, between him and the other running back, Cam Davis, they averaged 3.3 yards a carry. Okay, against FCS. Okay. Yeah. That is inexcusable. And let me just say that it was far worse than that because on the first drive for the Huskies, they averaged, I think, 5 yards a carry. Okay. And it just went downhill from there. How it happened, give Montana some credit. They punched him in the mouth and the Huskies didn't punch back. They couldn't punch themselves out of the corner.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I cruised around social media a little bit, and obviously some of the message boards I'm sure are just buzzing and going crazy. Jimmy Lake hasn't been the head coach very long, but it sounds like people are like, I mean, they're putting, rightfully so, a ton of blame on him for this game. But I see John Donovan's name being thrown around a lot. The offensive coordinator, he was fired from Penn State. I heard you mention the offense a couple of times already. They only scored 7 points against an FCS team. I mean, is that where all of the frustration is located? Is on maybe Donovan and obviously the head coach as well?
Well, the Husky fans responded level-headedly, immediately wanting to throw everything out, burn everything down.
We don't know what that's like.
Yeah, right.
So there's only as much pressure as he allows there to come in. What the players have done is, the mantra was unfinished business. Well, I don't think this is why they came back to have something like this. So the attitude inside the locker room is very different than the one outside. They are rallying around the head coach. They are playing for Jimmy Lake. There are guys that came back to finish their careers for Jimmy Lake, guys that could have been draft picks. So they love the coach inside the locker room. Outside the locker room, you go 3-1 and it's not enough. You should play for the Pac-12 championship, or at least have a shot at it if they can knock off Oregon. Still not enough. Losing to Appalachian State, though, I have to say that it feels unforgivable.
Well,
to not just to me, being a fan since 1974, but also to a lot of the fans that are my age and all the way down through the ranks. It seems to be inexcusable.
Yeah, you said Appalachian State. I think you meant Montana. It's the same thing. It's the same thing at this point, right?
Sorry, I wasn't trying to twist that into your back.
Oh, hey, look, it's ironic. It's ironic how we can draw back to that experience and how that kind of felt, and it just shouldn't happen. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It shouldn't happen.
One of the most ridiculous notions that I heard people say was that Michigan still hasn't recovered from losing to Appalachian State.
Yeah, we texted about that a little bit, Mike. Right? Like, I mean, Michigan went 9-4 that year. Like, I'm not even sure it really affected them that much that season, let alone, we're 15 years later or whatever it is. Was it 2007, 2005, 2007, right?
I think.
Yeah. So
2007, 2008 was when the Huskies put up a goose egg.
Well, that just goes to show, though, that can happen against a team like App State, and you could still go and put together a solid season,
sure.
and finish. So I think that speaks to kind of the danger of Saturday is that, last Saturday was last Saturday, but anything can happen.
Yeah, Michigan started that season off with the loss to App State, then they lost to Oregon, so they were 0-2, and they capped it with a big bowl win over a really, really good Florida team that year. I mean, it's early. You'd like to have I've said this a couple of times, Mike. Let me see if you think this is true. If Washington played Montana 50 more times, how many would they win?
50.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
It's one of those one-off.
But it's that one that kills you because they're not going to play 50 more times. But the thing that I've always said is about these early games in the season, I want the Huskies to win by 1 point. Okay. So they don't show Michigan or Ohio State or Notre Dame what they're capable of. Prepare for Michigan and play vanilla, block straight ahead and just overpower. How they could not overpower an FCS defensive line, giving up 3 sacks, 3 interceptions. That's the stuff that so for me, putting on my purple tinted glasses, I think, okay, the Huskies played extremely vanilla. Did they really get exposed, or did they spend all their time prepping for Michigan and we're going to see the real Huskies trot out there in Ann Arbor?
That's what I was going to ask. I'm curious, when a loss that improbable happens and there is a game like Michigan week 2 sitting on that schedule, how much of that performance do you think was Washington looking past Montana, or is Washington just that much in trouble with, some of the injuries and kind of, where they stand as a football team?
Well, and I did not say that this team was capable of losing to Montana, but the thing that I saw last season was against Utah, against Stanford. They put up goose eggs in the first half, and they tried to come back in the second half. But what they did was they put back-to-back halves like the Utah and the Stanford game. Now, if they're able to go out and put in second half games against like they did against Utah and Stanford, if they can do that the entire game up in Ann Arbor, look out, because this team can be explosive. But I think they lost of their explosiveness when with the receiving corps being so decimated.
Well, you mentioned some interceptions, turnovers. I think you said 3 interceptions in the game, and I know there was some quarterback battling going on heading into the season. So what is the quarterback situation right now? Do you think it's going to be a different guy, multiple guys? We talked a tiny bit about that with Michigan's cornerbacks coach today and what he expected, and he said he didn't think it was that different from guy to guy. I wanted you to clear that up maybe and give your thought on what they might do there.
Well, with inexperienced receivers, they're going to be used to catching the ball from a right-handed quarterback. Sam Heward is a left-handed quarterback. Do you change horses in the middle of the game and have an even worse problem where the ball is coming to them differently? So I think that I don't know if Jimmy Lake is going to have a really quick hook on Dylan Morris. As a coach myself, I want my guy to not play with the fear that he's about to be replaced. I want him to go out there and play with the hair on fire, not be afraid of mistakes, really force the issue, but get better. With the difference between, sorry to throw out some Seattle baseball references, but the difference between David Valley and Edgar Martinez was one better decision every single game. Now, Dylan Morris has to make 3 better decisions. He has to be able to look a DB off over here, look a linebacker off over here, and hit the guy over here or over there. He has to come up with 3 better decisions. Or, I think maybe, if he has 3 interceptions and they lose big in Ann Arbor, it could be, the end of somebody's job. And here's a fun fact for you to kind of throw this out there. Michigan actually ended, I don't know if you can see this guy. Oops, this guy right here, Don James. Michigan ended his coaching career with a loss. So if Jimmy Lake goes up there and has a really bad game, I don't think that they'll end it. But I just wanted to throw that one out there, kind of throw a bone for the old Michigan fans.
There you go.
That are checking it out.
Yeah.
But somebody, if something happens, I got to think that somebody's going to be out of a job somewhere along the line. Now, if it's a 48-54 game and the Huskies win or keep it close, I think that there's going to be a lot of hope for the rest of the season. I don't know that they have the horses, though, to really compete at the wide receiver position at this point.
Well, one other thing, Chris. So the quarterback situation might be a little bit fluid and a little bit, what's happening there. Dylan Morris, was Sam Heward, right? Brock's nephew?
Correct.
Is there his son?
Son.
Okay. All right. So a couple options there. The corners, though, the defensive backs are really good, led by Trent McDuffie. And, Washington's got this track record of putting DBs in the league year after year after year, and it looks like they're going to continue that trend. This is one of the things I'm most intrigued about because we saw Cade McNamara only throw the ball 11 times last week I think he's going to have to do a hell of a lot more than that this week. And he might not see a better secondary all season until maybe not at all. I mean, because even Ohio State, as talented as they are, their DBs are not the strength of that defense. So I'm really curious about this matchup between Cade McNamara, the offense at Michigan, the receivers without Ronnie Bell going up against these DBs at Washington. How good is that group?
How good is that group? I tell you what, there were a couple of shocks of starters for the Huskies, but Kyler Gordon has been an on and off starter when he cannot get personal fouls. He's probably the best defensive back on that team. No, nothing against Trent McDuffie, because Trent is special as well. So those are two guys to really watch out for. And Kyler Gordon actually he led the defensive backs in tackles. He can be a lockdown corner. So if you can have those two guys shutting things down, they can make it pretty hard. You have some guys that are interchangeable. Julius Erving, Cameron Fabiculanon. Those guys are really good, and there's a lot of depth to this secondary. When a 2-year starter, on and off 2-year starter, Asa Turner, tumbles down the depth chart, I think it says a lot about the depth and the desire of the other guys to be that next Washington defensive back to go into the NFL. And it starts, I think sort of like a receiver. You have a number one receiver, he makes all of them better. Having a guy like Trent McDuffie or Kyler Gordon, they're going to make all the other defenders better because they're taking away a big portion of that field. So, we're going to really see, I think Michigan was doing that win by one, not throw the ball around and show what you guys can do. So, I think it's going to be, I think that's going to be a fun matchup to watch is Kyler Gordon. But the one guy to really watch out for, I don't know if this is on your talking points, is Edifon Ulo-Fashio. He had a pass breakup. He had, I think, 6 tackles. But he will do a lot of different things in the middle of that defense. Last year against Arizona, when Arizona was trying to make a comeback, he had 3 straight pass breakups. So he knows what the quarterback is going to do, and he can play defensive back. He can play inside linebacker. He has an incredible bend on a pass rush. He's the guy that I think that is probably one of the better defensive backs, although he's a middle linebacker, just because of how he understands the coverages, how he understands the scheme in front of him, because he's in the film room all the time. And so when he's done with college or the NFL, he's going to be a great coach because he gets the schemes.
Well, they've got some dudes. I mean, that's, I don't know the ins and outs of a lot of Pac-12 teams, Washington being one of them, but as I've dove into it this week and read some things here and there, and now hearing you speak, they're talented. They've recruited well. I know they've lost a little bit. They've been hit by the injury bug a little bit on both sides of the ball, but there are some NFL bodies on that defense, especially, and that's why I think, what's Cade look like against a team like that? Because he did well against Western Michigan last week, but he didn't have to do hardly anything. He only completed 9 passes. So, yeah, I'm really interested to see how that plays out. Chris, if you want to jump in now and ask anything, I think you're muted there, bud.
Well, the thing that I will say, I'm going to bring up the other Cade. I don't know if this leads Christopher into what he's going to talk about, but Cade Otton for Washington, he
Big
caught
tight
8
end, yeah.
passes. He caught 8 passes. Okay, so your quarterback completed. He was targeted 9 times. He caught 8 of the passes. So, that's kind of a fun little stat for you right there.
Yeah.
Well, it does kind of lead into my question. And I think one of the, at least from the Michigan fan standpoint, one of the more intriguing storylines heading into this game was the fact that former Wolverine Giles Jackson had transferred to Washington, and everybody was sort of looking at this game as like, it's going to be Jackson's return to the big house, and from our standpoint, and I think Brandon and I were pretty much in agreement on this, we always view Giles as one of the top playmakers for Michigan. We thought that he should be getting far more touches during the game. Obviously, it didn't work out, but I'm curious now that he's at Washington, what is the perception of Giles Jackson? How do you guys feel about him?
They're waiting for the match to ignite that stick of dynamite. I feel like if he's utilized, there are other guys that can be used just as well as him on the offense that I don't think they really showed last week. I think Sean McGrew and Giles Jackson have a lot of the same skill sets. I think with Giles Jackson, I think that it's his returning abilities that I really want to see. But I think they're going to have to use him a lot in the slot as well. So I think that the way that he's viewed until he doesn't produce is a stick of dynamite that they just have to ignite at the right time.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, that's pretty much similar to how we view it.
Yeah, that was pretty much it.
The only other question I have, and I always think it's interesting when we have, guys on or people on from the other team, I'm wondering, we know how we feel about Michigan here in Ann Arbor, but what is the perception of the Michigan football program out in Washington? I mean, what do you guys, you're coming to Ann Arbor to play Michigan. How do you view this football team? What scares you the most?
Well, the first of all, the perception of Michigan is somebody that you always have to fear, because Michigan is always going to recruit well. It's going to come down to coaching. That's just the perception that you're going to have the bodies. Can you have the right coach to do that? Because you're always going to be recruiting well. And I think that when this game was announced 5 years ago, a lot of people circled it. They're like, that would be on a lot of Husky fans' bucket lists of where they want to go to a game on the road. So that's the sort of 30,000 foot sort of view of it. Now up close, we wonder why they haven't been able to turn that corner. They've been there so close so many times, but there's been an Urban Meyer in the way. There's been a Jim Tressel in the way, because I think recruiting, Ohio State recruits better than anybody except maybe Alabama, but that seems to be the roadblock in Michigan. It's going to be a fist fight. We know that. You're gonna have to take punches. You're gonna have to give punches. Michigan is always going to have athletes. They're always going to have the left tackle that is 6'7", 340. They're always going to have. See if you guys know the name Greg Scrapneck, or however it was pronounced. Some of those old guys. Those are the things that Washington is always looking to, sort of not enviously, but I think that the two programs are so close that they're often viewed as a sleeping giant. And when things can be put together by the right coach, the right formula for everything, look out for Michigan, and I think really look out for Washington.
All right,
I feel better about our program already.
Oh, yeah. All right. That was pretty good. That was a pretty good endorsement.
Yeah, it was.
And the thing though that I have to say is I find your headsets distracting, because I feel like you're playing like some video game, and I feel like all this I feel like all of a sudden you're gonna be like, got him, yeah, and I'm like, what just happened?
That's after the pod. That's after
we have had some discussions about whether or not we want to do a little more of a pro like microphone that the arm comes into the screen. I see you with the flag mic. I don't think I could do an hour long of holding it. I like to, whatever. But we've had some discussions, so we'll take that. We had
a bunch of audio issues when we started
early.
And this was the first thing that worked, and I think when it worked, we were just like, let's ride it. Let's go with it. Yeah,
we went with it. All right, Mike, I'm going to get you out of here on this. Give me how the game's going to go. And if you feel like it, throw me a prediction. We're going to do ours on Friday. We're not doing ours yet. We've got a little bit of a way that we approach things. So I'm trying. I don't want to put you out on a limb if we're not going to give ours. But if you've got one, I'd love to hear it.
If there's a game that I do not have a clue about, it's this game right here. Is the Tyrone Willingham team going to show up, or is it going to be the Don James team that plays for the 1991 team that shows up for Washington? Because they're capable of putting 40, 50 points on the board if they play 4 quarters. But they're also capable of putting 7 points against an FCS team.
Yeah.
Do I have a prediction? I think they got a wake-up call. And I hope that they crack open that can and there's a little bit of whoop ass in there and they can do something. But I just don't have a good feeling about the receivers. Too many injuries, lack of depth. I think that Washington's offense struggles to get 17 on the board. I think 30-17 Michigan.
There you have it. A nice, open, honest take. Yeah. A big view, a short view, a program versus program view. I like, Mike, I know you've been doing it a long time, man. Like I said, we started talking about this stuff last year, and I'm like, this guy knows his stuff. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you're throwing references out there that I'm like, okay. Yeah, I didn't get it.
Wait, come on, you don't know who Greg Skrapnik is?
No, not that one. It was the baseball one.
I had no idea.
Yeah, the baseball one, and then that's probably about it. Yeah, you said a Seattle baseball reference. I don't know. Yeah, I know Edgar Martinez. I don't think I knew the other guy. Yeah, I didn't know that guy. Anyways, Mike, appreciate the time so much, man. Great. And we'll probably talk a little bit more throughout the week as we get closer to this one. But I really appreciate I'll call it the open, honest look, and he has Michigan getting the W in this one. I think Michigan fans will be happy to hear that from a guy who's as plugged in as anybody out there in Seattle.
All right. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks a lot, Mike. All right, Chris, there you go. You heard it from him. He knows a hell of a lot more about Washington football than we do, and he
getting the dub.
He sees a 2-possession win, 2-score win for Michigan. So what does that do for you?
Well, I do think it is going to be more of a fist fight. I think Michigan is just going to prove to be the stronger team, whether or not that's because Washington's got some significant injuries or just because, Michigan is that much better. I think the Wolverines will pull away late. I think his prediction is fair, 30-17. I think I'm kind of somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't think Washington's going to quite get to 14 or 17 just based on what I heard about their offense from last weekend. It looked pretty anemic. But that's what scares me about this game, as I do think it was a wake-up call. I do think that there's going to be a flip that's switched, and I think they're going to come out and play with a huge chip on their shoulder. And look, Washington's got nothing to lose Saturday. Everybody's already making fun of Washington. Washington already looks like kind of like the joke of college football right now. Michigan has a lot to lose. Jim Harbaugh has a lot to lose. This program, these guys have done a lot of talking during the offseason, and fans are excited about what they heard, what they saw on Saturday, and what they expect out of this team for the season. So all the pressure is on Michigan this weekend. No question about it.
It's so tricky, man. I mean, I've been sitting at that 7-5 mark all offseason, and then Michigan looks pretty good against Western, and Washington loses to Montana, and Indiana gets that ass whooped by Iowa, and now I'm like, well, that's why you wait to play them, and that's why you wait to see what things are going to look like. But this game, man, I'm with Mike. The way he was explaining it and talking it through and getting up to the point, I didn't think he was going to give a prediction. So I'm super glad that he did and talked about the score that he might see and what he thinks is going to happen, because I find myself going, we haven't written it yet. It's coming up on Friday. We'll have our staff predictions, and I don't know. I don't know what I want to say for the score. I don't know what I want to say for who's going to win. I know if you look at just performance of week 1 versus performance of week 1, Michigan certainly looked more impressive. It's not even close. But the players, Coach Harbaugh, the other assistant coaches, they're all talking about it like, and we just heard it from Mike. If they played them 50 more times, it'd be 50 more wins. I don't know, man. I find myself very, very torn about this one. But again, you just heard it from a guy who knows Washington in and out, predicting a 13-point loss on the road against Michigan. So that carries quite a bit of weight for me. And I'm really trying to think about what I'm going to do for this staff pick, because I find myself being very torn. So we will finish. We're already over an hour, so we won't spend a ton of time on this. But because of all that, because of what happened to Washington, because of what you just said, Michigan's got so much to lose, and Washington's just bare knuckle boxing at this point, trying to just salvage anything they can. Does this game feel a little bit more lose-lose than it looked like at the beginning of the year, where you had a top 20 team, and if you beat Washington, like, it says something. That's a statement game. That's a big win. Now they're reeling at 0-1 after losing to Montana. It's like, well, yeah, you should have beat them. They're terrible. Did you see what happened in week 1? Why didn't you beat them by more? Like that, I can already feel that narrative depending on how the game plays out.
Well, certainly some of the shine has come off of the game. If Washington was coming in 1-0, they would be a top 20 team at that point. It would be a huge game for Michigan. But I don't view it as a lose-lose. In fact, I think that this is the type of game that you would think Michigan might come in and stub its toe on or trip on or struggle with when they shouldn't. So if Michigan goes out, handles its business like it did week 1, I don't view this as a lose-lose. I view that as a game that Michigan, just like I did week 1, it's a game you should go out and win. You've got better athletes on the field. You just need to go out and handle your business. And if Michigan does that, I'll walk away. If they win by 2 or 3 touchdowns, I'll walk away impressed. If they don't, and it's a close fight, I'll be at the same spot heading into week 3 that I am right now. If Washington and Michigan is close, but Michigan pulls it out, I don't know that I will know anything more about Michigan at that point either, because I don't know what Washington is. Yeah. So I just feel like you're looking at these teams, the teams you expect to be good, like in Indiana, stub their toe in Iowa. And it's like, now you don't know what to expect. I thought I had a grasp on what the Big Ten was going to be this year. I don't know. I mean, things are looking a little more, there's a little more parity than I guess I thought there was going to be.
Iowa, really tough place to play on the road. I mean, Michigan fans have seen that before too, but I wouldn't have never picked that game to be that lopsided.
No.
Even, I don't know if I looked at that one that closely in terms of like actually picking who I thought might win. Pretty sure Iowa was favored by like 3 or 3.5. Yeah. That was one of the ones we asked Jalen Mayfield about last Friday, but I never in a million years would have guessed it would be that lopsided. And now, there's parity. That's why college football is amazing. That's why I'm so glad it's back. That's why I'm excited for Saturday. Night game, May's out. Tons of energy going to be rolling around Ann Arbor and in that stadium. Dude, I don't know. I don't know what I want to say.
Isn't it great?
I just feel like last year I got so pissed every week when I'm like, Michigan, there's no way they can lose. And then they would lose. It happened 2 or 3 times in a row, and I finally said, I'm done picking them. I'm not going to pick them anymore until they prove to me that they're as good as I think they could or should be. Now, against Western, that was a different story. I mean, in no world do I think Michigan shouldn't win that game by a lot. That's why I picked them to win by damn near 30 points. Yeah. But this is a different animal. It's a big-time Power 5 school. They have recruited well. I know they lost had a terrible loss in week 1, but I just feel like they're going to treat this thing like their freaking Super Bowl after last week.
Yeah.
I don't know. I certainly know I wouldn't be putting any money on this one.
Nope.
Not even a dollar.
Zero idea what to expect.
Yeah, I have not even a dollar. But Anyway, we'll be back on Friday. We'll have a couple more days to think about it, a couple more stories to put out about it. Keep digging around on social media. Keep looking at this, looking at that. I'll be conferencing, whatever the hell that word is, with Mike more about what's going on. But you heard it from him, 30-17. He picks Michigan to win by 13 points over his Huskies. A team he just said it. He's been a fan of since 1974. He's putting that aside to go with his head rather than his heart, and he sees Michigan winning by 2 scores. So we'll see what it looks like. Chris, great stuff. As always, my man, always. We will be back on Friday. We'll talk a little bit more about this. We'll do our over-unders. We'll get into the picks. We're doing it all. Thanks for listening, everybody.